Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Steven Psihogios from Spartan Fantasy Football, and I'm going over my important lessons learned from early Yahoo Fantasy Football drafts. Let's take a look at those right now. The first lesson I learned is that there are a ton of post-injury players that are coming at massive discounts in fantasy football drafts. The four I'm going to focus on are Saquon Barkley, Michael Thomas, Dak Prescott, and Courtland Sutton. Right now, Saquon Barkley is coming off the board as the 5th running back in Yahoo drafts, which to me is a bit of a discount. When you consider where we were last season, Barkley was either the 1st or 2nd running back off the board in pretty much every fantasy football draft. Now he's coming back. I understand he suffered a torn ACL, but that was very early in last season. He should be pretty close to full health once the season kicks off this year. And let's not forget that he's joining a New York Giants offense that got a lot better. They added Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney this past offseason, and just plain and simple, this is the most talented running back in the NFL. I think if I have the number 1 or 2 pick, I'm strongly considering Saquon Barkley. Another player to consider as well, with his ADP where it is right now, is Michael Thomas. I understand Drew Brees is retiring, but is that really a bad thing? We saw last season that Drew Brees didn't have a whole lot to offer at the end of the year, and now he's either going to get Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. For fantasy sakes, I hope it's Jameis Winston because we've seen this guy sling the rock before. He was a top 5 quarterback in fantasy in 2019, so for Michael Thomas's sake, I hope it's Jameis Winston. The next player I'm going to talk about is Courtland Sutton, and at wide receiver, Sutton is being highly discounted. He's going around pick 98 in Yahoo fantasy drafts, which to me is just far too late for someone who was a mid-round pick last year. And not to mention, he's coming back to that Denver Broncos offense with an upgrade at quarterback. Sure, you might not think Teddy Bridgewater is a great NFL quarterback. I agree. I think he's probably below league average. But 3 wide receivers on the Carolina Panthers last season were top 25 wide receivers. So he's proven that he can at least facilitate for fantasy football, which is all we need. We don't need him to be a gunslinger. Just put the ball accurately into Courtland Sutton's hands, and that's something he can do. Lastly, I'm going to talk about Dak Prescott. He's going off the board at QB5, and once again, this is someone who was leading the position in fantasy points last year before he got injured in week 5. He's going at QB5 right now in Yahoo fantasy drafts around pick 50, but he should be much closer to the top where you see Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes going inside the top 30. The sky's the limit on a Dallas team that has a ridiculously talented offense and a absolutely brutal defense. Lesson number 2, go wide receiver in round 3. I did 3 mock drafts on Yahoo to get a feel for what position to select when, and by far the biggest mistake I made in one of my mock drafts was going running back. I know the ADP suggests one thing, but when you're in the draft, running backs come off the board early and often, and by the time you get to round 3, it really feels like you're reaching on whoever's there. Whereas the wide receivers, you have some great players to pick from. Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Michael Thomas, and Keenan Allen, all sitting there for you in round 3, and all guys who I project to have pretty heavy target volumes this year and should be surefire number 1s in fantasy football. So try not to focus too much on the running backs in round 3. I'm looking more so at the wide receivers. Lesson number 3, if you're gonna wait at quarterback, wait for Ryan Tannehill. This is the quintessential wait for it quarterback in fantasy football this season. Right now he's going off the board in Yahoo fantasy drafts as quarterback 12, and I just don't see any way where he doesn't exceed that draft capital. Last year he was quarterback 7, and now Tennessee has added Julio Jones into the mix. I just don't see how Ryan Tannehill is going to finish any worse than QB 12, so you're getting great value given where he's going in drafts right now. The 4th and final lesson I learned while doing these Yahoo Fantasy Football mock drafts was that Travis Etienne is the go-to middle round running back target, coming off the board right now around pick 74, which translates to RB28. Etienne's current draft position just oozes value. This is a first-round pick who has spent the last 3 years playing alongside Trevor Lawrence, who will be his quarterback in Jacksonville, and this is someone who is a very talented pass catcher, which especially in PPR is very valuable. I just don't see why Etienne is going this late in fantasy drafts. This is someone who has a lot of skill and is in a great position. And when you compare him to the other players going around this area of the draft, it's clear he's got way more upside, and the ceiling is much higher, and potentially the floor as well, given the pass catching duties he should see in Jacksonville. So right now, if you're going to target a running back past and beyond the first couple or first few rounds in your draft, it's got to be Travis Etienne.